today we'll see what's happening at 11 o'clock. Right now, let's immediately look for situations. Although, look, it's very strong here. AUK is ready to consider this currency for an increase. AUKF, 4 minutes, 300 for an increase. Now I'll explain why for an increase. Let's figure it out. First, we take the last maximum and the last minimum. After the buyer made this maximum, we started a downward movement. At this moment, the buyer should have gone to update their maximum to continue this movement, but something went wrong. And as a result, our upward trend turns into a downward trend. We continue to update our minimums for a while at this moment somehow. After this new minimum, we have a correction and there is no reaction from the seller. Here, it tries once more with its last strength to update its minimum in order to continue its downward trend. But the buyer buys up, matches this maximum, and with this maximum breaks the trend movement. That is now in the last interval, the priority remains with the buyer, for now at least. What I liked, why I want to go for an increase in this situation. So with CHF, I might need to use a catch-up. 2.5 minutes I will use in principle probably. Now, wait, let me think. 20 tick, so there was a volume. Okay, here is the market profile. There will be a reaction from it. All right, that's not scary. I'm using a catch-up. Here, immediately 4 minutes for an increase. So well, I stopped. We reached these highs. We reach with a good full-bodied candle. Next, this candle look has more buyer volume than the previous candle. The seller's volume becomes less. The candle is good, full-bodied, indicating strength. The nearest stop where the buyer is heading. Here it is. Yes, we had a new stop. That is, I can assume that at this moment a seller might appear. There is some liquidity. Because there were many purchases and sales here. Yes, the volumes tell you that. But overall, we are approaching this area with a good full-bodied candle on increased volume at the very top. A lot of volume. Yes, that is, there is volume to pass through this area. So overall, I am considering an entry here specifically for a breakout and further upward movement. There are facts, the fact of logic, the fact of the cluster, the fact of volume, the fact of candle dates. Most of it indicates a movement higher overall. For now, we are waiting. So 3 seconds until it doesn't give back to 1. It won't give back, but we were close waiting. 3 seconds remain until the end. Plus, we take back the amounts and we move on to further searching for situations. Here, for example, out and we surrender. There was a good entry after this candle. That is, if I had seen this candle with a large buyback. With the fact that the buyer grows, the seller becomes less, as there is again a lot of volume at the top for further upward movement. Also understanding that there was already a comparison with this downward movement, and again the priority is with the buyer. This maximum was also made, after which we saw the seller go down, didn't let it go up again, and the nearest place where a seller might appear is here. I could have taken this movement to my advantage. Now, based on the facts, it has already happened. If I enter in this situation, what can I observe here? The volume will definitely be less than the previous one. 5 minutes until the candle formation is complete. I don't see any strength at the top. The strength is currently concentrated in the middle of the candle. That is, the facts are no longer the same as they were in this candle. Therefore, the situation is not right for entry. I'll go look further. Here's another good moment. A minimum was taken out, and these combo minimums were taken out with increased interest. After which we now see a pullback movement. Look below what the volumes were here and what they are here. That is, the reason for it to go down is still unclear. According to the market profile, where we have the nearest liquidity, it is mostly concentrated above. That is, according to the movement profile, it can be considered as above. The nearest stop is currently located right here, from which essentially the seller should show themselves. Overall, there's a downward movement. If the seller intends to continue moving down now, we should see them from here. If the buyer wants to go higher, they must pass this stop, secure above it, only then can I consider it. Entry for an upward move will then prioritize the buyer, but for now, from this stop, the priority remains with the seller. The area of interest for the seller in this candle, we approach 3 minutes. The volume is decreasing, but there are fewer sellers and fewer buyers as well. I will consider it. Like beer, and for a decrease to GP, 3 minutes down. It's a pity. It's a pity that the movement is already slightly lost. But it's nothing serious. If anything, I'll use a catch-up. Fortunately, this is permissible on BO. Now, as I said earlier, for now, we have a downward movement. And until the nearest local point, the seller is in priority. If the buyer passes this local point and consolidates beyond it, the priority shifts to the buyer. For now, the priority remains with the seller. That is, I enter from the local area for the strong side when the buyer's strength is lost. This doesn't mean that right now I should see an immediate drop and it goes down like da 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 da. No, the buyers are calmly going into this area for some reason, right? They will try to pass through it. That is, again, the concentration of volume might be beyond the maximum. So theoretically, they could only remove this maximum and then go down. But if there isn't enough strength, we will see the downward movement earlier. I don't need much, just a small movement. The only downside in this situation so far is that the area of interest is still at the very top, and there is volume for further continuation of the movement. Basically everything now. We are waiting a little. So there are 16 seconds left until the end of this deal. And for now, it doesn't matter to me whether it's a profit or a loss, but what I want to say is that for all these 4 minutes, we are hovering around the opening point. So in 4 minutes, neither the buyer nor the seller managed to do anything. It turns out that the buyer came to the local area hoping to pass it and break this trend movement. But during these 4 minutes, we are stuck in one place. So where is the buyer's strength? And with what force does he intend to pass this area? I have questions. I already understand that the seller is holding it in this area even as it approaches. And talking about a serious breakthrough is in principle not possible here. The only thing is that this candle closed precisely on the buyer's victory with a very large number of ticks. So some small movement might continue, but as I said earlier, it might continue up to the point of removing this maximum. So for now, we use the first follow-up and wait further. 1 minute and 10 seconds remain until the end. It continues to move in the opposite direction, so some seller appears there. Therefore, I will use a 5-minute follow-up here for a decrease. For now, we wait. So in principle, what was supposed to happen did happen. It was just a matter of time. Well, there's still a whole minute until the end. We know that in your minute, anything can still happen, but logically, it even corresponds to the principle of losing strength. We read this from the sideways movement. As I said, this is for the previous trades. 45 seconds, we wait a little more, 10 seconds remain until the end of this trade. And guys, I want to recommend a very useful feature. It's located here, right here, y'all. You click here and set yourself a limit. Just recently, it happened that I entered 2000 here, but the trade opened at 2000. Luckily, it closed in profit for me. It was nerve-wracking. But to prevent this from happening, I set a limit for myself. And in principle, I advise everyone to do this so that you don't accidentally open at 1.0 more than it should be. I return the amount back and move on to searching for the next situation. So euro out. In this situation, I would like to try to take an entry on specifically a small downward movement, 750. Preferably this movement should be completed before the update. This minimum entry by standard for the strong side, a very sharp drop is happening. The buyer is practically absent here. This bayonet was passed. Bayonet thrust, you understand, right? Asians had no volume yet. So what interest they have in this bayonet is unclear. But here, lower down, very interesting volatility begins. To come here, because we have buying volume here, would be much more interesting. So my assumption is that if a pullback movement occurs, it will happen from this point. Yes, that is, well, practically plus or minus with this minimum. Up to this minimum, I would like to have 2 minutes of my benefit to use. So I think this line can be deleted, remove it, and then raise the area to the touch of this minimum. The entry, by the way, is not just random. It's the candle, it's the logic, it's the volume. And look at the pour. Now it has become even stronger, but a little earlier it was slightly smaller, around 140 something ticks. That's what I was afraid of. Didn't make it. Upon touching, they also removed the minimum and we get a pullback movement. It's a pity. The RK7 tick buyer doesn't look that serious. Then I'll have to use 4 minutes here. Catch up on the decline. Quickly came, updated the minimum, sharply bounced back. That's why I always say that if we enter For the continuation of the movement, we enter up to the nearest minimums, preferably up to the area, to avoid buoy such nonsense. I just showed you this kind of nonsense as an example. For now, we wait. If it closes me at a loss, I will use the second catch up again. 1750 on the decline. Well, we are waiting for entry points. 5 seconds remain until the end. Plus, on the second catch up, the buyer is buying back. That is, the seller just made a red candle. Practically in this place was the buyer. Buying back again, there won't be a movement lower now. Either sideways movement or they will go to a higher volume. That's how it happens. There is a main volume nearby here. Couldn't gather it the first time up to this point, right? And that's how you get carried away. In such a situation, you can lose a lot. It's not easy at all. So there will be fewer buyers, more sellers. Oh, more buyers, fewer sellers. The area of interest at the top has been bought up for now. Did you see that seller? 149 ticks at the top. It's dangerous. Well, there are 2 volume levels. A reaction can occur from them. I would like to go for the buyer, but I'm afraid that we will get here very quickly and might face a rebound. You see how they pour in? Let's just try. We are doing it like this. Okay, we will do it. Like this. 2 minutes for an increase since everything changes dynamically. I will prioritize the movement here. And this distance is because the buyer is providing good resistance. The buyer's volume is larger. There is a lot of volume at the top to go higher. Plus, I saw this red candle with such a buyback from the seller. And in the end, we still pull it out for the buyer. That is, the seller who was in this movement is currently not there. Well, of course, damn, it let me down. You knew that you had to take the plus before the minimum, before the touch. Limit orders might trigger upon touching. They triggered just as I jinxed myself. So here we have movement in the opposite direction. A rollback is happening. So today I understand that everything will close for me on the second chase. All right, let's take a bit more time here. Again, the second chase is in action. Let's wait. Can you imagine, right? All these 3, almost with half a minute it enters at the opening point. Well, near it. That is, there is no specific movement either down or up. This is, of course, a mess. Not a market. This is some kind of brevantos. 20 seconds. Yes, I picked up some goodies there, got a 4% cashback. So, 10 seconds left until the end. What is this? Plus, of course, it should give back, but this is again in the closure with the second chase. Look how it's going. Cool, right? Right. On the dot. That's it. All right. It's a pity. It should have given back to me the first time. Oh well, I'll go look for another situation. Although I could also work this situation downwards. No, I still need to get to here. I'm looking for something else. So euro, a strong spill is happening. The place was on good volumes. The nearest for the price is again this unclear spike at 1430. Well, I wouldn't say there was strong interest, but nevertheless the buyer tried after removing this minimum look. Yes, to do something, to go up, but they were suppressed. That is essentially now our movement should continue towards this area. In this candle, there was a buying movement higher. There were so many ticks in Euro GBP. Let's try in 5, 2 minutes, 2. I want 2. 2 because I'm too lazy to wait for 4. Well, kind of. Okay. We didn't see a reaction from the buyer. There was a buyer by the cluster, this pullback, but this candle didn't go higher. It went lower, right? So it means there wasn't a strong buyer. In this candle, look at the volumes. At the close, 517. That's a heck of a lot. The volume increased significantly. It likely increased due to the seller. The volume is growing on the seller. Overall, I mentioned where we are heading here. Here it is, the nearest place where a buyer might appear. And the mistake might again be that the movement happens too quickly or cool upon touching the area, and it might bounce back, as it did in the previous pair. Mistakes don't teach me anything. All right, let's set this up neatly. Well. Ta-da! 56 seconds. Let's wait a little longer. 4 seconds left until the end, plus it will give it back. You know what I would do if I wanted someone to buy my course or follow my signals? I would re-record this trading session and remove all these zeros. I would keep recording until everything was green or until little was used for recovery. Well, is it basically already worked out? Try a lot on the Euro GBP retracement. So far, there is no buyer by the cluster. The buyer is also not revealing themselves. We can pass the volume on the seller below these minimums. By the way, there was a good upward movement from these minimums. These are 15-minute candles. After all, I would start catching the retracement movement from here. The only downside is that you can't say the movement is strong, but nevertheless, I'll approach it with 2 full-bodied candles. So if I see some buyer activity somewhere now, I'll open a trade here, I think for 4 minutes. So plus 41, a buyer appears at the bottom, which is something, although very weak. 58 is growing. Let's try it. Let's start working on the Euro GBP for a pullback movement. But considering that I understand where it might go to these minimums, but in principle, if resistance appears when entering the area, then it's already a good area. Of course, it's a tricky thing, but there still have to be some points from where something should happen. By the way, the largest volume, this minimum removed the previous 2. Okay, it's taking a long time here, so while we wait, 5 seconds remain until the end. This is another. Plus, the pullback happened downwards, took it upwards, took it, that's it. I think everything is fully understood. Well, I'll try to find another one. So about Shchelkal, everything is there. Only this option, are probably the only option that can be worked out, but with a reduced amount. So, the GBP V25, tick turned out, a stop appears, there was a stop, there was news, in principle they rehabilitated for it. The next stop, I don't know what to do with it yet. Water, there is a volume from which we can react. A large volume is also a trend. There was a downward movement. Now we are approaching the nearest local area where the seller should pick up according to the trend. If they pick up, the buyer should consolidate in this area. Breaking the trend, then going higher is still very difficult to say because it will be. The candle will close in 2 minutes. In principle, the seller should pick up now. We should see a downward movement, but there is volume nearby, and this distance is very, very small. I think we will lower the amount to 100. GBP, percentage everywhere. Now is the time it should be. GBP, JPY is good. 90. Thinking. At the very top, there is a seller pulling back a little. Below, there is very strong support in terms of volume. 248, 361, zone of interest below. This, of course, is not very good. It is already playing a restraining role. But look, we are standing still here. They aren't even driving us out from here. And what is this? Where did the volatility go? Disappeared? I don't see a good seller appearing here. GBP, JPY. I don't see you here. Come on, let's do it like this. And then we'll figure it out further. That is, there should be a reaction from the seller if the seller intends to follow their trend. But we are just standing in his territory, and they aren't driving us out of this place. We're even moving a little higher. Is the candle strong? Strong. Is the pullback weak? Weak. Volume due to the buyer. Due to the buyer? Is there a lot of volume in the cluster? A lot of volume. Logically, what? Logically, still in favor of the seller. And here is precisely the turning point. But if there were a seller, we should have seen them. And they are not showing themselves. Therefore, a smaller amount and entry to the nearest place where a seller might appear. Here. Yes, a reaction might appear here already moving downwards. So 2 minutes. Let's see. Let's wait a little bit. Okay, 5 seconds. No. Well, we closed on a good volume from the buyer. I don't believe that the downward movement will continue. 27 tick seller. Well, what is this? What is this? So the volume was increasing due to the buyer in the area, but the buyer was showing weak candles. Now we've been given such a good seller again on an increased level. For now, if the volume flies below 70, it increases. The volume also grows due to the seller. We can go lower for another minute. This is, of course, an interesting moment. I think I'll use a catch-up here. 4 minutes, 250 for an increase. So 250 and 650. All of it, yes. Contradicted myself. GBP. GPY will have to change positions. There probably won't be many other options here. So 10 seconds to the end, what do we have here? A lot more volume continuing to go down, changing to a decrease entry. For what reason? Did I still want to jump above my head and try to understand that if a normal seller doesn't appear after the maximum is removed, then most likely the buyer will pass this stop? Well, as I mentioned earlier, until the buyer consolidates beyond the nearest trend maximum, the priority remains with the trend. Well, here I wanted to play a little bit of a guessing game, especially since there was a good candle closing on a good volume, a cluster, yes. Meaning everything was in place to go higher. But again, we closed here, we did go higher, but that's all. That's all it took to go higher. Indeed, a seller definitely appeared who provides resistance along the trend. But where am I going to enter for an increase now, since we haven't consolidated beyond this stop? But I have no choice but to switch to the stronger side. 3 seconds to the end. I won't boast about this profit because I violated what I was talking about myself. Well, it turned out to be a very large trading session, but it took a heck of a lot of time and effort for me. So guys, don't hesitate to give a like here. I worked hard for you. Explained everything, told everything, showed everything. And on that note, basically, goodbye.